Guys, it is Friday the 13th, 2025, and I hope everybody's been having a wonderful day so far today. I hope everybody's having good luck and a nice Friday without anything bad happening to them. I don't know how much I put into stuff like that, although I will say that when I was a drinker, on a day like a Friday the 13th, I didn't test my luck. I would go to work and then go straight home. I would never go out to a bar or anything like that on the Friday the 13th. Although I don't really believe in it. Like I said, I just wasn't pressing my luck and I didn't want to find out. So, like I said, when on a Friday the 13th, I went to work and I came straight home, and that was all I did. But once again, I hope everybody's having a nice day today. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who are about to be, getting ready to take off for the weekend, getting ready to go for a week vacation, or you're just taking off for the weekend or whatever, something like that. And, I think today's topic is a really good one. And what I wanted to talk about today really has to do with, another reason to stay sober. And a reason that we're not drinking or using today, because this is one of those ones that unfortunately used to happen to me all the time back in the day, all the time. And fortunately for myself, a lot of it I do not remember. A lot of this stuff people had to go back and tell me later on and be like, do you remember what you did, or do you remember what you said, or something like that? And I would be like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because when I was a drinker, I blacked out every single time I drank, for the most part. I would say 98, 99% of the time I blacked out, which was every single day for the most part. The only reason I didn't get blackout drunk if I was sick, I can't really think of many other reasons why I didn't black out. Maybe I had something going on. Maybe one of my kids was sick. Maybe we had to go to the hospital for something. Maybe one of my kids, ended up, because we did have a couple occasions when my kids got really sick and we had to take them to the hospital and stuff. None of them ever had to stay in the hospital, but there were times that we had to go to the emergency room or something like that. And you guys know how that can end up. You go to the emergency room and you get there at 5 o'clock and you're leaving there at 3 o'clock in the morning. So days like that, I wouldn't get blackout drunk, but for the most part, I was blacked out. And like I said, the topic for today is something that used to happen to me all the time. And what that is just, saying and doing things that we regret. And, unfortunately, that happens all the time when we're drinking and with alcohol. Like I said, I know for myself, it used to happen to me all the time. I can think back to so many occasions where, I woke up the next morning. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who are going to be able to relate to what I'm talking about here, where, you wake up the next morning and you stretch and you're like, oh man, it's a brand new day and the sun's coming in the window in the morning. And I've always been a morning person myself, even when I was a drinker. Even though I woke up in the morning and felt like total crap every single day, I've always been a morning person. Just something about the morning it excites me. It's the beginning of a new day. There's so much opportunity in front of you. Like I said, it's just always excited me. So I'd wake up in the morning and be like, all right, it's a brand new day. What am I going to get accomplished today? And, I'm already thinking about stuff I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden, this flashback would come, I would get this flashback out of nowhere, first thing in the morning. And it would be a flashback from the night before. And I would have this little teeny speck of a memory of me doing something or saying something to someone. And the anxiety that would hit me. It was like I just got hit by a ton of bricks because it would stop me dead in my tracks. Here I am, I just got up, made myself something to drink for the morning. I'm getting ready. And then all of a sudden, it's just like I ran right into a brick wall. Because I would get this memory and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did that or I said that last night. And then the anxiety would really start to set in as I tried to piece the little bits of memory I had together, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't put the pieces of the puzzle together to remember exactly how the night played out from the night before. I would remember something like, somebody yelling at me and saying, "I can't believe you said that to me," or something like that. And that's the only, bit of memory that I would have. And then maybe I'll remember a little bit of a memory of like going home that night, or walking in the front door, or a memory of walking into a gas station and buying a 12-pack of beer, or walking into a gas station and buying a pack of cigarettes. But, my whole night would be these teeny little fractions of memories throughout the night. And I never could, sometimes I could, but for the most part, I couldn't get all the puzzle pieces put together. I just could not figure out the timeline in the timeline of events from the night before, because I had gotten blackout drunk that night. And like I said, the anxiety that would set in the next day when these little memories would come back to me, because I'm sitting there like really stressing about it. And I would start playing this whole thing out in my mind. I'm like thinking to myself, like, okay, well, if I said this to this person, is that going to get back to this other person? And then the other person is going to tell this person. And the next thing you know, I would just start thinking about all these types of things. Or, I might have done something and I'm sitting there thinking, maybe I drove intoxicated the night before, and something happened. I don't know. I lost my ID or something. And, I'll start playing out all these scenarios in my mind. I'm like, thinking to myself, did I lose my ID at the gas station and I was driving drunk, and maybe I stumbled when I got out of my vehicle and they had a surveillance camera, and they're going to, somebody brought my ID into the gas station and they went back and looked at the security footage and saw me stumbling around. And I would start thinking to myself, man, the cops are going to show up and they're going to want to talk to me. I'm not saying that happened specifically. I'm just saying these are the types of thoughts that I would have. I would start playing all this stuff out in my mind and trying to piece together the night before, because I couldn't remember anything. The anxiety that I used to get in the mornings, trying to remember what had happened the night before it's unbelievable. But once again, I'm here to talk about today about, just doing and saying, things that are ridiculous when we're intoxicated. And like I said, that's something that used to happen to me all the time. I can't tell you how many times I got into arguments with people, how many friendships that I lost because I was intoxicated and I said something that I shouldn't have said. It's endless. I mean, so many things have happened to me because I was intoxicated and said or did something that I didn't mean to. I'm sure that there are so many of you out there who can relate to this. Heck, probably almost every single one of you watching this can relate to this, unless, you yourself have never been drunk or haven't had a problem with alcohol or something in the past. Because alcohol is one of those things, it really loosens us up. And we will say and do the most ridiculous things when we're intoxicated. And not to mention just saying and doing ridiculous things. A lot of people will make huge mistakes when they're intoxicated. They'll, go to a bar and, be hanging out at the bar with their friends. And next thing you know, they meet somebody of the opposite sex. And, when we get to drinking, people can start to look a lot more attractive after you've gotten intoxicated, and things can happen that we normally would not do unless we were intoxicated. So, like I said, people will go out, go to the bar for the night, and they'll just meet somebody, and before you know it, by the end of the night, they're at a hotel room, and they've made a dire mistake. And, it's something they would have never have done had they have been sober. But because they were intoxicated, they cheated on their spouse. And things like that, from one drunk night, it could completely change the course of your entire life from one night of being intoxicated and going out on the town. Just something like that happening. Or maybe, even worse, going out one night, bumping into somebody of the opposite sex. You know, they might not have seemed that attractive before you started drinking or before you got intoxicated, but next thing you know, you're intoxicated, the two of you sleep together, and then somebody ends up pregnant. And, you know, something like that, once again, could just entirely change the course of your life. You know, by doing something like that. Next thing you know, you and your spouse are getting a divorce because, you know, somebody's gotten pregnant from a one-night stand because, you know, two people were intoxicated, you know, did something they most likely would not have done had they had been sober. You know, and like I said, just one bad decision, one night, could just change everything. And things like this happen all the time. I mean, all the time. Because when we get to drinking, our inhibitions just go right out the window. We're not thinking about what we're doing. Not at all. You know, how many times have you made a poor or a bad decision after you were intoxicated? You know, and I'm not saying that, you know, that everybody on here just goes out and makes all these bad, poor decisions all the time when they're drinking, but it does happen. It might not happen every single time, but I'm sure that every single person watching this can think back to a time when they were intoxicated that they did or said something that they really regret now. You know, when we get sober, you know, we don't tend to do those types of things anymore. It just doesn't really happen. I mean, yeah, of course we can say or do things that we don't mean to if we're sober, but for the most part, we're not going to do, you know, things like, well, I guess we could, but for the most part, we're not going to go out and, you know, just meet somebody one night at a bar and decide to sleep with them and, you know, just wreck everything in our lives. You know, those are things that a lot of times happen after we've gotten intoxicated because we're not thinking about the future. We're not thinking about how is this going to affect me later on down the road. And not only how is this going to affect me, but how might this affect everybody else around me? How is this going to affect my friends and my family? How is this going to affect their friends and their family? You know, there's just... it's the things that we do when we have been drinking, you know, we just a lot of times make really, really bad decisions. And like I said, these decisions could ultimately affect the rest of our entire lives. And, you know, and not just saying and doing things we regret, but, you know, on top of it, you know, how many times have you gone out to a bar or gone to a club or something like that, or even gone to like a friend's or family's house and, you know, everybody's drinking, having a good time, you know, everything's honky-dory, there's no issues at all. And then the next thing you know, as people start to get more and more intoxicated, you can start to hear the volume in the room start to increase more and more and more and more, because as we start to get intoxicated, the louder and louder and louder we begin to get. And next thing you know, you start hearing two people start arguing back and forth with each other, and before you know it, you look over there and there's fists being thrown, chairs being thrown, a fight breaks out, and then what happens after that? Everybody wants to get in and try to stop it, and then somebody gets accidentally hit, and then more people get into a fight, and the next thing you know, you got 10 people over there fighting with each other, then the police show up, the whole night's ruined. Now people have criminal charges, people end up in jail. I mean, stuff like this happens all the time, and there you go right there, you know? Ending up in jail. You know, how many of us have gotten into trouble and ended up in jail after we've gotten intoxicated? You know, I mean, it happens all the time. You know, you go out, you're having a good time, you're out at the bar with your friends, and the next thing you know, you wake up the next morning and you're in the drunk tank. And you have no recollection of how you got there. I never got a DUI or anything like that, so I can't relate to it as far as that's concerned, but I do know so many people that have. And I know what it's like to black out. I know what it's like to wake up the next morning and not remember what happened the night before. I've talked about it on here so many times, but, you know, I would get off work and go hang out with some of my employees after work. You know, we'd go to the bar to have a couple beers, and the next thing you know, I'm waking up on somebody's floor at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I can't find my phone, my wallet, my keys, and nothing. I don't know where my car is. I don't even know where I'm at. I don't even know who the people are that are surrounding me. That's not a good feeling when you wake up. It's still dark outside. You're thirsty as all get out. And you wake up in some stranger's house. There's people all around you. There's beer cans and beer bottles laying all over the place. And you're like, what in the world happened last night? And you have no recollection. And like I said, you don't even know how you even ended up there. And I'm sure there are many people watching this right now who have experienced that. You know, they went out one night, went to go out and watch the game with their friends, and you know, the next thing you know, they're waking up and they're in a jail cell using a roll of toilet paper as a pillow. And they've got a jumpsuit on, and their clothes are gone. They're like, what in the world is going on? And next thing you know, they're drinking out of the jail water faucet because that's the only place you can get something to drink. I'm just saying, you know, these types of things happen. And when we get sober, I'm not saying that we don't have to worry about that at all, because, you know, that would just be a ridiculous statement, because sober people get into trouble, sober people get in arguments, and sober people say and do things that they regret later. You know, when we get angry, a lot of times we'll do and say things that we don't mean to, you know. Like for myself, you know, I used to get angry and I used to break things all the time, and not every single time that I would do it was I intoxicated. Now, I was drinking during that period of time, and half the time I just felt like crap. So, you know, my mood wasn't the best, and when I would get upset, you know, I would tend to do things a little bit more irrationally than I would do as a sober person. I can say that I haven't broken anything since I've been sober. Yeah, I just was in a really bad mood all the time back when I was a drinker, because I just felt bad all the time. But once again, you know, I'm not saying that just because we're sober that people aren't going to say and do things or end up into trouble and stuff like that just because they're sober. But the chances of those things happen go way, way down after we get sober. You know, just not to mention, you know, number one, after we get sober, we're just not hanging out in a lot of those places where people tend to get into trouble and do and say things they don't mean to do. You know, if you're at home all by yourself, I mean, you know, how much trouble are you going to be able to get into? I mean, I guess you could do certain things. You could call the police on yourself and get into some trouble. But, you know, for the most part, if you're home alone, I mean, you know, there's just not much trouble that you can get into. But when people start coming into the situation, you know, the next thing you know, people can, you know, get drunk, you know, and it could all start just from a conversation about, you know, something as trivial as what year World War II ended. And the next thing you know, two people start arguing about, no, it ended on this day, ended on that day. And, you know, before you know it, they're fist fighting. And, you know, this is just the type of stuff that happens after getting intoxicated. I mean, it truly is. And I'm not saying, once again, this can't happen when people are sober. But the likelihood of that happening with two sober individuals opposed to two intoxicated individuals, there's a big difference there. But like I said, once again, you know, when we're sober, we're just, the chances of us doing or saying anything that are going to land us into jail or, you know, maybe potentially cause a divorce, or, you know, potentially cause one of our loved ones not to speak to us for the next 10 years, or, you know, potentially make it where, you know, Christmas every single year is awkward because certain individuals don't want to show up over at family's house because of something that you said or did 5 years ago. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. These are the things that happen when we are when we're in active addiction and we're drinking. And I know for myself, those types of things used to happen to me all the time. I lost friends, and most of my friends, because of my actions when I was intoxicated. I did and said so many things in my past that, I mean, I would have to sit down with a pen and paper, and I could probably fill up a book this thick, and that would be, you know, line on line, and not skipping lines or anything like that, you know, of all the ridiculous things that I did back in my past. It's just crazy to think about how much better our lives become after we get sober. We just don't have to worry about that kind of stuff happening anymore. You don't have to worry about waking up at 6 a.m. going, what in the world did I do last night? Or getting that phone call at 10 o'clock the next day going, do you remember what you did last night? do you remember making out with that girl at the bar in front of everyone? You know, things like that. You know, especially if you live in a small town and you go to your little local watering hole where everybody hangs out and you do something like that, you know, you're married and you make out with somebody in front of everybody, words are going to get around really quick. And before you know it, your life is turned upside down because you made a poor decision when you were intoxicated. And that's the kind of thing that we don't have to worry about so much anymore when we get sober. Our lives just become so much simpler. The drama in our lives is almost eradicated. Of course there's going to be some drama. It's just part of life. But the amount of drama that you have being intoxicated or being in active addiction versus being sober, it's a night and day difference. You know, I have drama in my life. Not much, but it's there. You know, I dislike drama. I cannot stand it. I hate being around it. But when I was in active addiction, it was like I was a magnet for drama. It was like I was drawn to drama like a fly to a light bulb. I mean, it's like, I don't know what I did, or I guess maybe because I was always drinking and in these situations, and I put myself into places that I probably shouldn't have been, and I wouldn't have been if I hadn't have been drinking. But like I said, you know, when I was in active addiction, it was like I was a magnet for drama. I was a magnet for bad things to happen to. And now that I've gotten sober, that it's not so much the case. Yeah, bad things happen to me. Yeah, I have some drama. Yeah, I get in arguments sometimes. But, you know, one thing, too, is that if I, you know, have an altercation with somebody, not a fist fight or, you know, just an argument about something, it only lasts for a couple minutes. And before you know it, it's over. You know, I don't keep carrying it on and dragging it out for days on end because, you know, I'm still mad about it. And really the only reason that I'm still mad is because I just feel like crap and I'm angry at myself because I can't stop drinking. Like I said, guys, when we get sober, just for the most part, a lot of that just crap, it goes away and we don't have to worry about it anymore. Our lives become so much simpler, so much more easy to handle. And, you know, we don't have to worry about waking up in the morning and getting a phone call and somebody telling us something we said or did at the bar the night before. We don't have to worry about getting a phone call like that at all anymore. It's just so much better of a way to live, so much better of a way to go through this life, not having to worry about that kind of stuff anymore. It truly is. So for today, guys, let's stay sober, especially on a day like Friday the 13th. Because, you know, like I said, you don't want to double up your bad luck, you know, going out somewhere and it's a day like today. So let's stay home today and let's stay sober today. And, you know, like I always say, the past is in the past. It's already gone. The future isn't here yet, but we do have right now. And right now, we can decide to stay sober. So for today, Friday the 13th, let's stay sober today, guys. Let's make that decision to stay sober and not go back to that lifestyle again. Let's not go back to that life full of drama. Let's not go back to that life where every single day our life is like the Jerry Seinfeld show. Not Seinfeld, the Jerry Springer show. Because that was what my life was like back when I was in active addiction. It was like Jerry Springer every single day. And since I've gotten sober, I don't know what to compare it to. It's almost like, what's the artist's name? The Bob, gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. But the guy that had the big afro and he just painted little stuff. He did the paintings and I'm going to paint a little tree here, a little mountain here. My life went from Jerry Springer to that show. I mean, truthfully and honestly, it did. I just barely have any drama or anything that I have to worry about in my life anymore as far as that's concerned, because I'm not in active addiction anymore, and I don't say and do things that I don't mean, because I'm not drunk all the time. And I hope that you don't get drunk or drink today either. So thank you so much for watching today, guys. I really do appreciate it. And until tomorrow, I will see you all then. I love you guys so much, and y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.